You ready? You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, gays and gays. This is the Real Pineapple. This is your humble host, Hunter, here, and we have arrived at the final, until, of course, Beverly Hills Cop Axel Foley comes out here in July. We've come up to the last Beverly Hills Cop film, Beverly Hills Cop 3, which came out in 1994. So that's I think that's what's that? I think 86 is when, 87, pardon me, is when Beverly Hills Cop 2 came out. So 7-year gap, kind of wild actually, in between the second and third film. So one thing I will say, as I jump in here, I enjoy the hell out of the first Beverly Hills Cops films. When you look back at Beverly Hills Cop 2 coming out in '87, you see the run that Murphy goes on, Coming to America in '88. Harlem Nights in '89, Another 48 Hours in '90, Boomerang in '92, Distinguished Gentleman in '92. It makes sense that it would take a little while for us to go ahead and get Beverly Hills Cop 3. And what I think is very interesting between all three films is that all three films have different directors. I think that's very unique to this trilogy. The third film here, Beverly Hills Cop 3, is directed by John Landis, who of course you know from directing The Blues Brothers, Schlock, Blues Brothers 2000. He was a producer on that, which, you know, but he went ahead and of course directed some episodes of Psych. Psych, a very underrated show, by the way, if you have not seen it. But and he, of course, directed Murphy in Coming to America as well. So here's the thing. I always remember growing up hearing that Beverly Hills Cop 3 sucked. Like, everyone I talked to was like, Beverly Hills Cop 3 sucks. Once you watch it, you're going to just, you're going to be annoyed by it. That's what I've been told for literal decades. Because, again, this is my first time watching all three of these. So, what did I think about the third film? Let's get into it. So, Axel Foley, once again played by Eddie Murphy, he goes ahead and returns, and the film opens up with this attempted drug bust. And we have Foley leading the team, again, showing his progression from where he was in the first film all the way up to this point. And it's him and several people, and his boss Todd, once again played by Gilbert R. Hill. And we find out that this company or this drug bust has much larger ramifications as far as money laundering and just several things. And so, unfortunately, in this opening, in a pretty funny moment, Todd goes ahead and tells Foley, where's SWAT? Did you hire SWAT for this bus? And Foley, because he's Foley, is like, oh, this is open and shut. Like, I don't need, like, we only need SWAT if they, if they were to have, intense guns. Like, we got this. Don't worry about it. And, of course, because it's Foley and nothing can ever be straightforward, of course, these fuckers have guns. So the whole operation ends up going south and turns into a giant shootout. And so, unfortunately, through this shootout, Axel's friend and boss, the aforementioned Inspector Todd, ends up getting killed. And it's a pretty brutal death. And again, this is a movie, I mean, we're obviously out of the 80s now, but, we're in 94. But the thing about this film as far as the direction from John Landis, is I think this is the best directed as far as the action beats, because obviously the technology has improved dramatically, from the first film back in the 80s. But this film, I think the action, it is the best handled for me. I think the action is the best handled. You get the most blood by far out of the three films, so that there is more of a connection to when the violence is happening. And Axel being on this mission of revenge for someone who has helped him come up and has given him that rope throughout the prior two films to be Axel Foley. The fact he's on this mission of revenge, and then we find out how big the scope of this murder is in terms of Inspector Todd and the man who killed him. It really does add this gravitas to Axel's character. And I actually think from a plot standpoint, and I know there's going to be people who go, what the fuck? This actually might be my favorite one out of the three. So Foley is told that he, through a couple clues that he gathers, he is able to go ahead and go back to Beverly Hills. This time, he follows the trail of everything that's occurred to Wonderworld, which is essentially Disneyland. Like, it's Disneyland in the same way that in Chuck, the Buy More is clearly Best Buy. Even down to the Wonderworld font, it has like that Disney-esque script font to it. They're not hiding the fact that it's fucking Disney. And honestly, the park, weirdly, kind of in the same vein as New York in The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, the park feels like its own character. And I've mentioned this in my first review for Beverly Hills Cop, the OG, how one of the things I really like about each film is that each film gets darker. And this one in particular, having murders taking place in a children's theme park and having money laundering happening in a children's theme park, I mean, it's exactly like Disneyland. It's exactly like that. I'm sure murders happen at Disney all the time, but I really love the way that the film leans into that aspect in particular, and especially when it comes to the villains, who I'll get to in just a moment. I want to backtrack real quick. So there's this point where they, of course, have the funeral. They go ahead and they have the funeral for Inspector Todd, and Foley ends up talking to Todd's widow, and that scene in particular is really fucking well done, and it's probably one of the most emotional sequences in the trilogy, because as Todd is dying, and Foley freaks out, and Murphy does a great job of selling the absolute shock when he sees Todd get shot. But Todd, with his dying breath, looks up at Foley and goes, Axel, you want a coffee break? Go get that son of a bitch. And so when he's talking to his widow after the funeral, he lies to her and goes, because she asks him, did like, were you able to talk to him? Did he say anything to you? And he goes, oh, he mentioned you and, said that he loved you. And she looks at him very, very kind of like bullshit. And she goes, that doesn't sound like my husband. And Axel kind of pauses for a second. And he says, he looked up at me and said, you on a coffee break, go get that son of a bitch. And Todd's widow smirks at Axel and goes, yeah, that sounds like my husband. And it was one of those things where I went, wow, it's one of those emotional beats that hit me in a way that I went, huh, like, I really fucking like that. It caught me off guard in the best way. And again, I know there's going to be people who listen to this and go, like, he cannot like the third one the best. And the more I think about it, yeah, I think I do. I think I actually do like this one the best. But through his investigation, as I mentioned, he goes ahead and he ends up at Wonderworld and goes ahead and once again teams up with, of course, Judge Reinhold once again, which that just made me happy. It's always nice to see Billy Rosewood, and what's cool is that Rosewood's gotten a promotion since the events of the second film, which I was like, hell yeah, well deserved. And so that actually changes the dynamic up because Rosewood isn't just kind of going along for the ride. He is actively helping Foley while having this more authority to him. We do find out that John Ashton's Taggart has retired, which I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of bummed about that because I think the trio, and that's probably my biggest complaint about this movie, is that the tandem works so or the trio works so well that not having them back, I was kind of like, damn, that kind of sucks. And then we don't get Bogomil back either. So I was like, okay. Given the amount of stuff that is going on in the film, I kind of get why Bogomil's not back, but I figured if you weren't going to have Tacker back, you could have at least had Bogomil back. So I was a little disappointed that neither one of them are back in the fold. So Foley, the main foil in this movie for him is oh god, I'm blanking on the guy's name. There we go. Ellis DeWald is the main foil in this, who is played by Timothy Carhart, who you know from Thelma and Louise, Heaven and Earth, and Black Sheep, to name a few. And for me, he is the most swarmy, douchey villain out of everyone that Foley has come across. He's so self-assured, and he has so many connections and roadblocks that he's able to put in front of Foley. But it's so frustrating because you know he's guilty. You see him at the beginning, and you know he's the one who went ahead and gunned down Inspector Todd. But my God, he's so. There's this point where he talks about like, oh, what's wrong? You sad I killed your dad, or he says something to that effect. But he's just, the way he's goading Foley is, honestly, it's very pro wrestling-esque because he's getting Foley to lose his cool, because this is by far the most invested Foley has been in a case. So it actually works on that front, but it also adds to you just wanting to see Foley take this motherfucker down. So, it's funny. So, Foley, there's a couple action sequences in here that I really like. So there's this one action sequence where these kids are in this like tilt-a-whirl type machine or type ride, and the machine goes ahead and malfunctions because Foley is, messing around the theme park, and so the security is like, oh, we can't have him here, so they're trying to go ahead and fuck with Foley, but they end up putting these kids in danger. And so in a really cool fucking sequence, you get to see Foley jumping between these different compartments, these different cages of the ride, and he goes ahead and saves these kids, which I thought was really fucking cool. And as someone who has a huge thing about heights, I was fucking terrified that whole time and really holding my breath. I mean, obviously he's not going to die, but they do a great job of really selling the terror that Foley's going through. And again, it shows how good of a cop and really how good of a person Foley is. The fact that even though he's clearly blinded by revenge and wants to go ahead and take this whole organization down, and go ahead and take the wall down, the fact is he is still a cop at the end of the day, and that, protect and serve, that's first and foremost. And I really like the way that they go ahead and show that sequence. I think I've mentioned I've already mentioned that Judge Reinhold is back as Rosewood. I will say though, the big final shootout that they end up having, I thought was fucking fantastic, and it actually feels akin to the last big shootout in Lethal Weapon 2, which I really dug. And like I said, there's more animosity given the plot in this. Um, I don't know. This movie really does work for me. I will say the more I'm talking through it, I would say this is my second favorite of the trilogy. I think two is still my favorite just because I think because of the the trio dynamic that they have. But I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed this a lot. There's a point where Foley is like on the run, and that whole sequence, that whole bit of the movie, you really do feel the tension as the walls start to close in, including a double cross that, while I think a lot of people will see it coming, the way it's executed, I went, I love that. I was like, I like that a lot, actually. So I'm going to keep this review a little short, just because it's getting late. But I really dug this. I really dug this a lot. It's crazy. This is a 11% on Rotten Tomatoes, which, really? 11%? It's better than that for sure. I would give this a solid B plus. So wait, this actually, wait a minute, B plus. I'm gonna go A minus on this because I think I actually do like this as much as I like the original. Maybe a little more even. Like I will end up rewatching these again before the new before Axel Foley comes out, or Axel F comes out. So I'll probably talk about that on that review. But 11%, this is definitely not. This is a much better film than Rotten Tomatoes is showing. But I really enjoyed this. So yeah, solid. Man, I'm right on that B plus A minus like tilt. Damn. I'm gonna go. Uh, I'm gonna go B plus for now. So it is by default like my third favorite, but I still really enjoyed this. Because I do like the action. I do miss the trio, but and then I will say there is a romance that they have in here with Eddie Murphy and Teresa Randall's Janice. She works at the park, but there's not enough room. I think if you have another 10-15 minutes in this movie, I think you can go ahead and develop that plot, develop that romance more. But it does feel like a plot device because she happens to be working in the park. There is there's also this bit in the park where Foley is dressed up as one of the mascots at the park, and this little kid is just being shitty, just being absolutely shitty, to being absolutely shitty to Foley, and and he basically tells Foley to go fuck himself while he's in the mascot costume, and he ends up shoving the kid. And oh my god, that shit made me laugh so hard because yeah, kids can be little monsters. And you think about Disneyland and how, the people who are dressed up as Marvel characters or as Disney princesses, you have to always maintain that persona, like you can't break. And man, that just that made me really happy seeing that shit. Yeah, that was really great. Also, there is a spot where Foley steps in front of line, cuts in line, in front of a very well-known director, and that cameo actually made me laugh out loud. I had no idea that this director was in the movie, and I was like, that's pretty funny. So, yeah, I really dug it. I had fun with this. Solid B plus, like I said. So, yeah. Yeah, y'all. Beverly Hills Cop 3. Have you seen it? What'd you think about it? Let me know in the comments. You can go ahead and please go ahead and like and subscribe. You can find me on YouTube at The Real Pineapple. That's REEL Pineapple. You can follow me on Blue Sky at realpineapple.bsky.social. You can go and follow me on Instagram, the Twitter, and TikTok. You can find me there at jhunter Real Pineapple. And you can follow that's J Hunter and then REEL and then Pineapple. And you can follow me on Letterboxd at Black Shazam. Don't forget to go ahead and follow me on Twitch as well, at twitch.tv/TheRealPineapple. And you can listen to, go ahead and please rate the show, especially on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps me out. But you can listen to the podcast pretty much wherever you listen to them. SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneUp, and Samsung Podcasts, to name a few, at The Real Pineapple. By the time you hear this, all my reviews for the Beverly Hills Cop trilogy will be live. My review of Axel Foley, or for Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. Why not just call it Beverly Hills Cop Axel Foley? That's such a weird show. Anyways, my review for that will be up on the 4th of July. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button everywhere so you know when that review is live. But thank you so much for listening, everyone. Stay safe. Take care of each other. Give someone a hug today. We gotta all use some more positivity. And never forget, as always, to keep it real.